Evelyn sat on the curb, her worn jacket pulled tightly around her. Life hadn't been kind to her. She'd lost her job, her home, and even her family over the years. Now, she spent most days wandering the streets, trying to stay invisible. But today something changed. A little girl, no older than 6, was playing near the road. Her laughter filled the air as she chased a bright red balloon that had slipped from her hand. Cars zoomed past, their horns blaring, but the girl didn't seem to notice the danger. Evelyn's heart raced. She didn't think. She just acted. Sprinting across the street, she lunged forward and grabbed the girl, just as a speeding car screeched to a halt inches away from them. The crowd gasped, frozen in shock. Evelyn held the trembling child close, whispering softly to calm her. "You're safe now," she murmured. The girl's mother ran over, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she cried, hugging her daughter tightly. "You saved her life." Evelyn nodded weakly, brushing off the praise. She wasn't looking for gratitude. She'd just done what anyone else would have done. Or so she thought. Among the onlookers stood Nathaniel Hartwell, a man who rarely ventured outside his luxurious penthouse. Dressed in an expensive suit, he watched the scene unfold with wide eyes. Something about Evelyn's selflessness struck a chord deep within him. He approached her cautiously as the crowd began to disperse. "Excuse me," he said, his voice soft but firm. Evelyn looked up, startled. She didn't recognize him. He clearly wasn't from around here. His polished appearance contrasted sharply with her tattered clothes and weary face. "I saw what you did," Nathaniel continued. "That was incredibly brave." Evelyn shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "I didn't do anything special." "Yes, you did," Nathaniel insisted. "Not everyone would risk their life like that. Please, let me help you." Evelyn frowned, suspicion creeping into her expression. "Help me? Why?" "Because you deserve it," Nathaniel replied simply. For a moment, neither spoke. Evelyn studied him carefully, unsure what to make of his offer. Finally, she shook her head. "I don't need your charity." With that, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the bustling city streets. But Nathaniel wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Nathaniel couldn't stop thinking about Evelyn. Her face, tired but determined, stayed with him long after their brief encounter. He had seen countless acts of kindness in movies or books, but witnessing it in real life shook him to his core. It reminded him of his late wife, Sophia, who had always been the heart of their family until her sudden passing years ago. That night, Nathaniel sat alone in his penthouse, staring at the city lights below. His wealth had once brought him comfort, but now it felt hollow. He spent his days isolated, avoiding people and burying himself in work. Yet Evelyn's selflessness stirred something inside him, a longing to reconnect with humanity, to find purpose again. The next morning, Nathaniel decided to track her down. It wasn't easy. Evelyn didn't want to be found. She avoided eye contact and kept moving, blending into the crowded streets like a shadow. But Nathaniel was persistent. After several days of searching, he finally spotted her near a park bench, sketching faint lines onto a scrap piece of paper with a stubby pencil. "Evelyn," he called softly, approaching her cautiously. She looked up, startled, then sighed when she recognized him. "What do you want?" she asked bluntly. "I told you. I want to help," Nathaniel replied, sitting beside her. "I know you don't trust me, and I understand why. But please hear me out." Evelyn hesitated. There was sincerity in his voice, something she hadn't expected. Still, she crossed her arms defensively. "Help how? You don't even know me." "You're right, I don't," Nathaniel admitted. "But I'd like to. What you did for that girl, it proves you're stronger than most people realize. And I think you deserve a chance to start over." Evelyn laughed bitterly. "Start over? That's easier said than done." "I'll make it happen," Nathaniel insisted. "Medical care, housing, whatever you need. No strings attached." Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Why are you doing this? What's in it for you?" "Nothing," Nathaniel said honestly. I've lost sight of what matters." Seeing you risk your life for a stranger made me realize how much good there still is in the world. Let me help you, and maybe, in the process, you can help me too." For the first time, Evelyn saw vulnerability in his expression. Beneath the polished exterior was a man struggling to find meaning, just like her. "I don't know," she murmured, uncertainty clouding her voice. "You don't have to decide now," Nathaniel said gently. "Just promise me you'll think about it." Evelyn nodded reluctantly, unsure if trusting him would change anything, or if she even wanted it to. As Nathaniel walked away, he felt a flicker of hope. For the first time in years, he felt alive. Over the next few days, Evelyn wrestled with Nathaniel's offer. Part of her wanted to believe he was sincere. After all, his kindness felt genuine, and she couldn't deny that she needed help. But another part of her was afraid. Afraid of being taken advantage of owing someone like him something she could never repay. She tried to go back to her routine, but it wasn't the same. Every time she saw a luxury car or heard footsteps behind her, she wondered if Nathaniel would reappear. And then one day he did. "Still thinking about my offer?" he asked when he found her sitting on the same park bench, sketching again. Evelyn sighed, putting down her pencil. "I don't get it," she said finally. "Why me? There are plenty of other people out there who need help." "Because you saved that little girl," Nathaniel replied without hesitation. "You didn't hesitate, you acted. That says more about your character than anything else ever could." "But I'm not some hero," Evelyn shot back, frustration creeping into her voice. "I'm just surviving, barely. And that's exactly why I want to help," Nathaniel said firmly. "Surviving shouldn't be this hard. Not for anyone. Let me give you a chance to live, Evelyn. Not because I pity you, but because you deserve better." His words struck a nerve. Evelyn looked away, tears welling up in her eyes. She hated feeling weak, hated letting others see her struggles. Yet there was something about Nathaniel, his quiet persistence, his refusal to give up, that made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, she could trust him. "I don't want charity," she said softly after a long pause. "It's not charity," Nathaniel assured her. "Think of it as an investment in yourself. You have potential, Evelyn. I can see it, even if you can't right now." Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up her pencil and resumed sketching. The silence stretched between them until Evelyn finally spoke. "Okay," she whispered. "But if this turns out to be some kind of trick—" "It won't," Nathaniel interrupted gently. "I promise." For the first time in years, Evelyn allowed herself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, things could change for the better. Nathaniel wasted no time. The next day, he arranged for Evelyn to stay in a small but clean apartment temporarily while they worked on finding her permanent housing. He also scheduled a visit to a doctor to address the lingering injuries from her heroic leap and years of living on the streets. At first, Evelyn felt out of place in the cozy apartment. The soft bed, running water, and warm meals were luxuries she hadn't experienced in years. She kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Nathaniel to reveal his true motives or demand something in return. But he didn't. Instead, he checked in regularly, asking how she was adjusting and ensuring she had everything she needed. One evening, as Evelyn sat at the kitchen table sketching, Nathaniel stopped by with groceries. "I wasn't sure what you liked, so I got a little of everything," he said, setting bags on the counter. Evelyn looked up, surprised by the gesture. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," Nathaniel replied with a small smile. "But I wanted to." As they unpacked the groceries together, Evelyn found herself opening up, just a little. She told him about her love for art, how she used to paint before life fell apart. Her eyes lit up as she spoke, and Nathaniel noticed the change immediately. "You're really talented," he said, glancing at her sketches scattered across the table. "Have you thought about pursuing it again?" Evelyn shook her head. "It's just a hobby. Besides, I've got bigger things to worry about, like finding a job." "Why not both?" Nathaniel suggested. "There are programs that offer training and support for artists. Maybe you could turn your passion into a career." The idea seemed impossible, almost laughable. But deep down, Evelyn felt a spark of excitement, the kind she hadn't felt in years. Over time, their interactions grew less formal. Nathaniel shared bits of his own story, how he'd lost Sophia, how guilt and grief had driven him to isolate himself. Evelyn listened quietly, realizing that behind his polished exterior was a man carrying his own scars. For the first time, Evelyn began to trust him. Not fully, but enough to let her guard down. When Nathaniel encouraged her to enroll in a local vocational program focused on creative arts, she hesitated but eventually agreed. "It's just temporary," she reminded herself. "If it doesn't work out, I can always go back to, well, whatever this is." But secretly, she hoped it would work out. For the first time in years, she dared to dream of a future where she wasn't just surviving, but thriving. With Nathaniel's support, Evelyn began attending a vocational training program focused on art and design. At first, she felt out of place among the other students, many of whom were younger and seemed more confident in their abilities. But as she immersed herself in painting and sketching, her natural talent shone through. The instructors praised her work, calling it raw yet powerful, and encouraged her to keep pushing her creative boundaries. Evelyn also started therapy sessions, something Nathaniel had gently suggested during one of their conversations. At first, she resisted, unsure if revisiting her past would do more harm than good. But as she opened up about losing her job, her home, and eventually her family, she began to heal. Therapy gave her tools to process her pain and rediscover her sense of self-worth. Meanwhile, Nathaniel was undergoing his own transformation. Spending time with Evelyn reignited parts of him he thought were long gone. His capacity for empathy, connection, and hope. He started volunteering at shelters and community centers, inspired by her resilience. For the first time in years, he felt like he was making a difference, not just with money, but with his presence. One afternoon, Evelyn invited Nathaniel to see an exhibition showcasing student artwork from her program. She was nervous, fidgeting with the hem of her sweater as they walked into the gallery. "I'm not sure you'll like it," she admitted, glancing at her paintings displayed on the walls. Nathaniel studied each piece carefully, his expression thoughtful. Her art told stories of struggle and survival, of darkness giving way to light. One painting, a vibrant sunset breaking through storm clouds, caught his eye. "This is incredible," he said softly, turning to her. "It's you, isn't it? Your journey." Evelyn blushed, looking down. "I guess so. It's how I see things now, hope after hardship." "You've come so far," Nathaniel said sincerely. "And you're only getting started." For the first time, Evelyn truly believed him. She realized that while Nathaniel had helped her rebuild her life, she was the one doing the hard work, the healing, the creating, the dreaming. But despite their progress, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Evelyn still worried about becoming too dependent on Nathaniel. Was she ready to stand on her own? And what did Nathaniel truly want from all this? As they left the gallery that evening, neither voiced these doubts. But both knew they needed to address them soon as weeks turned into months. Evelyn's confidence grew. Her artwork gained attention, and she even landed a small commission to design posters for a local charity event. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of purpose and pride. But with her newfound independence came doubts about Nathaniel's role in her life. One evening, after another successful day at the program, Evelyn confronted him. "Do you ever think I'll be able to repay you?" she asked abruptly, her voice tinged with frustration. Nathaniel looked surprised. "Rep? No, Evelyn, this isn't about repayment. It's about helping someone who deserves it." "But that's just it," she said, pacing the room. "I don't want to feel like I owe you anything. What if I can't live up to whatever expectations you have? Or worse, what if people think I'm only here because of you?" Nathaniel sighed, stepping closer. "Evelyn, listen to me. I didn't do this so you'd owe me, or so others would see me as some kind of savior. I did it because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That kindness matters. That people are worth fighting for." She stopped pacing, tears welling up in her eyes. "But what happens when you move on? When you decide I'm not worth the effort anymore?" "I'm not going anywhere," Nathaniel replied firmly. And neither are you, not unless you choose to. You've earned every bit of this, Evelyn. Don't let fear or guilt take that away from you. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the weight of their emotions hanging between them. Finally, Evelyn nodded slowly. Okay, she whispered. But promise me one thing. Anything, Nathaniel said. Promise me we're equals now. Partners, not benefactor and beneficiary. He smiled softly. Deal. With that understanding, the tension eased. Evelyn realized Nathaniel wasn't trying to control her life. He was simply offering her a chance to rebuild it. And Nathaniel saw that Evelyn's strength lay not just in her resilience, but in her determination to stand on her own 2 feet. They agreed to keep moving forward, together, but with clear boundaries. Months later, Evelyn stood in front of a crowd gathered at a community art gallery, her heart pounding with excitement and nerves. Tonight was the opening night of her first solo exhibition, a collection of paintings inspired by her journey from homelessness to hope. Each piece told a story, raw and honest, of struggle, survival, and renewal. As she scanned the room, her eyes landed on Nathaniel, who stood near the back, smiling proudly. He wasn't alone. Several people had approached him, eager to learn more about the artist behind the powerful works. Evelyn felt a surge of gratitude, not just for his support, but for believing in her when no one else did. After thanking the attendees for coming, Evelyn took a moment to reflect. She had come so far since that fateful day on the street when she saved the little girl's life. Back then, she never imagined she'd be standing here, celebrating not just her art, but her resilience. Nathaniel joined her after the speeches ended, handing her a glass of sparkling water. You were amazing up there, he said warmly. Thank you, Evelyn replied, her voice steady now. For everything. He shook his head slightly. This is all you, Evelyn. I just gave you a push. You did the rest. She smiled, knowing he was right, but also understanding how much his belief in her had meant during her darkest days. Inspired by Evelyn's transformation, Nathaniel had taken steps of his own. He founded a nonprofit organization aimed at helping individuals experiencing homelessness gain access to resources like housing, education, and job training. The program bore the name Second Chances, a nod to the very idea that had brought them together. You've changed my life too, you know, Nathaniel admitted quietly as they walked through the gallery. Before I met you, I was lost. You reminded me what it means to care, to really connect with someone. Evelyn looked at him, seeing the man beneath the wealth and polish. We saved each other, didn't we? He nodded, his smile soft but genuine. By the end of the evening, Evelyn knew she was ready to embrace the future. Not just as an artist, but as someone who had rediscovered her worth. And Nathaniel, too, felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing he'd found meaning beyond his money. Together, they proved that second chances weren't just possible. They could transform lives in ways neither had ever imagined.